When my son-in-law mocked me as a loser at his promotion dinner, I let him finish his toast, then calmly told him he would never see another dime from me. No anger. No raised voice. His smirk vanished before dessert. When the waiter slid the check to him with a note I had stapled to it, the money stops. The company card is cancelled. The house you brag about is legally mine. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. The clink of cutlery and polite laughter from nearby tables went faint, like the world had pressed its thumb to the volume button. Gavin stared at the folded paper as if he had never seen words before. The mahogany-paneled steakhouse felt like a church suddenly emptied of prayer. My daughter, Elise, blinked down at the crème brûlée she had been savoring, spoon hovering in a curl of caramelized sugar. Across the table, my grandson Caleb's brow pinched. He is 11 and reads faces faster than the rest of us. Next to him, his little sister Audrey, only 7, was tracing circles in condensation on her water glass, humming something from last week's school assembly. She looked up at me, then at her father, then back at me, small eyes steady, as if deciding where the truth lived. The truth had been living quietly in my pocket for months. I am 71 years old. There are lines on my hands that were not there the day I taught Elise to ride a bicycle, and there is a space in my chest that will never be filled because June, my wife of 43 years, is gone. But grief, if you let it, turns to a sort of metal. It does not dull you. It makes you precise. These days I keep my promises like a well-honed blade. Let me tell you how a man like me gets called a loser by a boy who married his daughter. Let me tell you what I did afterward, and why, if the world were fair, there would be a word for the feeling I had when I watched my grandchildren eat Sunday pancakes in a kitchen I built, in a home I protected, while their father emptied his desk into a cardboard box across town. There is no word for it. But you will recognize it when we get there. Gavin's promotion dinner began with applause and a bottle of wine I brought. Deep red, the kind you do not drink so much as hold in your mouth for a moment to let it speak. He liked to let things speak in public too, especially when the subject was Gavin. To upward trajectories, he said, tapping his glass. The candles threw warm light across his face, flattering the sort of handsomeness that comes from a gym membership, a decent tailor, and steady praise. He thanked Elise for believing in me, which made her smile, and he thanked my professional family, which made his sales team clap too hard. Then he turned to me, and the performance shifted. Something in him could not resist. And my father-in-law, he announced, voice pitched for the back table of his colleagues, who has had a comfortable retirement. Laughter bubbled. He let it linger. I cannot imagine having it that easy. No pressure. No deadlines. Some men have it all figured out. He tilted his glass in a mock salute that did not reach his eyes. To finding meaning after you stop contributing. It was skillfully done, the way men like him do it, painted as banter, plausible as a joke, true enough to stick. He wanted the room to place me in a soft chair by a window with a blanket across my knees. He wanted me smaller. Diminish the man, and you never have to wonder how you built your life with the bricks he paid for. I have contributed, I said quietly. In more ways than you know. I let the words rest there, then took a sip of water. I made the decision as the taste of chlorine faded. It is not that I had not prepared for this moment. I had. But deciding to use the edge I had sharpened, that came as calm as a winter lake. I thought of June's last days, her fingers light but deliberate as she tugged me down, blue eyes bright even then. Take care of our girl, she had whispered. Not, give her anything she asks for. Not, let men who smile too easily tell you what you are worth. Take care. The difference is everything. If you ask Elise, she would tell you I took care of them until I made it easy not to notice. Tuition for the children's school. A roof repaired after hailstones like walnuts fell. A down payment the year the interest rates climbed. I did it because I could, because I loved them, and because I grew up with nothing but a man who taught me that a father is supposed to stand where the wind hits first. My own father had been a welder with burnt eyebrows and a laugh like gravel. He gave me a pocketknife when I turned 12 and said, "Every good tool does three things: cuts when it should, stays closed when it must, and fits your hand." Money is a tool too, he would have added, if he had ever had any worth speaking of. I also gave Gavin something he never saw. Or rather, he saw it and mistook it for the sun, always there, so not worth noticing. Nearly 3 years ago, when his small medical device distributor was expanding, the bank liked his pitch but loved my signature. They offered him a revolving line of credit with terms sweet enough to make a hummingbird dizzy, on condition of my personal guarantee. I read every page, circled the acceleration clause, underlined the phrase, "at lender's discretion." And then I did something that surprised even me. I founded a small holding company with a dull name, Granite Maple Partners, and purchased the lender's position 6 months later when they sold a basket of these lines to tidy their books for the year. It was all entirely above board. Gavin never looked past the monthly statements. Men who burn fast forget to read fine print. Granite Maple Partners sat in my desk drawer like the pocketknife my father had given me, closed, but entirely mine to open. He also did not know who owned the deed of trust on the house he and my daughter considered theirs. They spoke of our home, as if the phrase could cover the math. After June died, I bought the house cash for Elise because the market was hot and she and Gavin kept missing out with contingent offers. I put the deed in a family trust and drew up a 30-year, zero-interest note to my daughter with generous, flexible terms that only required modest monthly payments. No mortgage company. No middleman. No interest accruing like snow on a roof. We signed it around my kitchen table. Gavin skimmed, Elise hugged me. I did not wave the document under their noses when I later picked up their property tax bills, or when I never once saw a check for the modest payments my daughter was supposed to make. I deposited that silence in the same drawer as Granite Maple Partners. The days went by. Birthdays, soccer games, new school shoes, a family trip to the beach where I taught Caleb to read the tide. I had been letting him talk about real men and providers and earning your way for so long that he believed I agreed. I suppose, Gavin said, lifting his wine, not everyone is cut out for the pace. He smiled at me the way boys do when they think they have found a clever angle. But it takes all kinds, right, Mark? He never called me Dad, though I had told him he could. The first time he did it was reflex from pride. After that, I think he liked the distance it etched. It does, I said. I lifted my water again. The stem felt cool, steady. I looked at Elise. She looked away. Caleb's fork scraped softly across his plate. Audrey's foot tapped the rung of her chair. I could have let the moment pass. Chosen peace for a night. But here is another thing grief and advancing age do, they put your hand on the wheel when it is time to turn. You will never see another dime from me, I said. Metal in the air. The click of a lock. He blinked. What? The waiter arrived as if summoned by the words. He had one of those faces that stays calm even when grease fires erupt on the other side of the swinging door. He set a black leather folder beside Gavin's plate, bowed almost imperceptibly, and left. Inside the folder, along with the check, was a single folded note on heavy paper. The note had my signature at the bottom, thick and familiar. There were also 2 glossy cards, cut neatly in half, the company card for his line of credit, and a duplicate he kept in his desk. Gavin unfolded the paper. His eyes tracked the first lines. Then the color moved out of his face the way tide moves from a bay. He touched the cut cards as if they might be an illusion that would heal under warm fingers. He turned a page as if hoping another version of the world lay beneath it. "Dad?" Elisa's voice trembled. She had not called me that at the table in a long time, and the small intimacy almost unmade me. But she needed a father, not a rescue rope. "Let us enjoy dessert," I said gently. "There is no need for a scene." "There is no money left on the card," Caleb said, reading his father's expression as if it were a scoreboard. "Audrey," Elise murmured, smoothing her daughter's hair. "Sweetheart, do you want to go wash your hands with Mommy?" "No," Audrey said with the stubborn certainty of second children who watch and decide. "I want ice cream." God bless her. The waiter returned quietly with Audrey's ice cream and Caleb's chocolate cake. He did not meet Gavin's eyes. Service professionals always know when the lightning has struck and how to keep the room from catching fire. He refilled my water as if there was absolutely nothing unusual about a son-in-law softly strangling a linen napkin. That was the night I stopped being a cushion. It did not happen in a blaze. It happened like a winter morning in which you pull back the curtains and realize the frost line around your house is 10 feet wider than it was yesterday. After dinner, there were phone calls. Of course there were phone calls. We said goodnight in the parking garage, the echoing kind that make whispers trickier. Gavin's hands were on his hips. His movements were a sequence of sharp lines, the way men move when they cannot push against the thing in front of them so they push against air instead. "You cannot do this," he said. "I have done it," I said. "You set me up." His mouth twitched. He was trying on anger and finding he did not look as good in it as he had hoped. "I set up our family," I said. "For years. I set you up gently on a foundation that you insisted was the sky. You want to humiliate me in front of my team? That is what this is about. You want to be a martyr now?" The word was bitter in his mouth. "It is about teaching a lesson past the age when men want to be taught," I said. "And it is about protecting 2 children whose lives are not a ledger you get to redesign when your ego needs a snack." Elise opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I know that move." It was the same one I learned the first time I looked at our checking account when June's chemo bills began to arrive in envelopes with red letters. There is a kind of shock that cannot find a sentence. "What about the house?" she managed finally. "You cannot, you would not." "Do you remember the day we signed the note?" I asked, "and I told you it meant you would never have to worry about predatory terms?" "You did not say anything about." "I did," I said steadily. "You did not want to hear it, because you were in a beautiful fog named Hope. But I did. The deed is in trust. The note is in default. I have let it drift for almost 3 years. Not another month." A sound escaped Gavin that I did not recognize. It was not a sentence and not quite a growl, though it aspired to both. "You would evict your own grandchildren." "No," I said, and I stepped closer, not to intimidate him, but so he would not mistake my calm for distance. "I will not uproot my grandchildren. I will not force my daughter onto a couch. But I will stop financing your performance. There is a difference you do not want to see. He weighed my face. There was something feral in him now, hunger or fear. Men like him have never learned the difference. You cannot run my life. I am promoted. I am on a track now. People are counting on me. I am counting on you, I said. To do what? He laughed. To either become a father worth the title, or make room for one, I said. I did not raise my voice. Men listen better when you do not. He shook his head, not because he thought I was wrong, but because admitting I might be right would cost him too much in his own eyes. We will see about that, he said, the phrase of a man who thinks courts are a place where truth loses to confidence. I have always loved that line, I said. It sounds like a promise. It is usually a stall. He spun away, leading my daughter to their car with the choreography of a man who has practiced the move of owning the scene. Elise looked back once, a child's glance from a grown woman inside a dim garage. There are glances you never forget. There are moments you wish you had found different words. But guardianship is not a poem. It is decisions. At home I did not pour a drink. I boiled water. Tea steadies a man in ways whiskey only promises. I stood at the sink and stared at the little wet circles where the mug had rested after the last rinse. My hand stayed steady as I texted my lawyer, we move at 8. Full package. Trust, note, and GMP acceleration. Her reply came in under a minute. She is the daughter of a man I used to work for and she knows my habits like an old friend. Already drafting. Sleep. I smiled at the command. It is good to have one person in your life who tells you to rest with the confidence of a general. I did not sleep much. Memory does not ask permission. June's laugh moved across the room as if she had just walked to the pantry for a jar of cinnamon. Elise at 5 in a red sweater with a small embroidered fox on the collar, cheeks damp after a tantrum, running into my legs. Daddy, do not leave. I had not, until the night I understood that leaving can mean refusing to hold up a roof that was sheltering a storm. My father's knife sat in my palm when I opened the drawer for a pen. I thumbed the hinge. Closed, it looked harmless. Open, it was precisely what it was. I set it beside the paper with a care that might have been a prayer. The plan felt like a blueprint I had drawn a long time ago, folded carefully, and only now unfolded and weighted with stones on a table. Mourning made everything look less dramatic, which is one of the reasons mourning is a blessing. At 8 on the dot, I walked into my lawyer's office and signed the amendments to my family trust that would put my assets beyond the reach of any court petition that used the word incompetent with a straight face. Men like Gavin discover elders' rights when they hear a rumor about your blood pressure. I do not indict all sons-in-law. In another life, I might have been one. But I have worked long enough in places where deals are made to know the 3 weapons of a frightened man: charm, threat, and paperwork. I would remove one of them from the board. Next, we moved on the note. The default on Elisa's obligations to the trust was a matter of record and arithmetic. No one had bothered to add up numbers because I had always been the answer to every sum. I authorized a formal notice to cure. 30 days. Simple, fair, humane. I also filed, through Granite Maple Partners, a notice of acceleration for the line of credit underpinning 90% of Gavin's company inventory. He had drawn the line up enough in recent months to qualify for my favorite clause. Payment in full, due upon lender's discretion, which in this case was exactly now. Before lunch, I completed a thing I had been thinking about since I saw the children's faces in the candlelight. I created 2 education trusts in Caleb and Audrey's names, managed by me, that would fund their school and anything else they needed that could be traced to learning, books, camps, a piano if Audrey ever wanted to move from humming to the keys. I directed that disbursements would be paid directly to the institutions, not to their parents. There are ways to support children that do not require you to hand a man like Gavin another shovel. The phone began to ring before noon. It rang until the sun was lower, and then again when the sun went down. "Dad," Elise said. She had been crying. She had also been coached. You cannot just change everything overnight. It is cruel. It is responsible, I said gently. You are punishing me for marrying the man I love. I am stopping the punishment of enabling a man who mocks what built his dinner, I said. Please, she whispered, and I heard all the summers in it, the strawberry picking, the smell of our old station wagon's heater after rain, the first time she took my hand again in a hospital hallway when June's oncologist said the word metastatic without blinking. Please. Come to the house, I said. Just you. Not tonight. Tomorrow morning. The children can play. We will talk. You do not want him there, she said, and for once there was no performative outrage in her voice. There was only a woman who understood, too late, that you cannot keep asking the same question and expect a new answer to arrive out of politeness. I want my daughter here, I said. She hung up without saying goodbye. Phones teach us how to end things cleanly. People rarely follow the lesson. Gavin's call was a different sort. You push me, he said, I push back. Push, I said, not because I wanted a fight, but because it is sometimes useful to invite a man to show you what he actually has. He tried legal language first. We will challenge your competency in court. Do you think I set all this in motion without hearing my own voice read to me by a notary? He tried morality. A real man does not wave money around to control his family. A real man does not pretend someone else's money is an obligation, I said. A real man does not invite others to laugh at the hands that built the table he is eating from. He tried a threat he had not thought through. I will tell your grandchildren you are abandoning them. They will know where their tuition comes from, I said, and who shows up to watch them sing in the spring concert. He hung up then. Men like him confuse silence with victory. But silence is often just someone turning to another piece of important paper. The next morning was make or break in a way that set a low hum behind my ribs. Elise rang the bell without knocking the way she used to when she still brought me Sunday cinnamon rolls, back when Gavin called me, sir, with that sheen that looks like respect until you touch it and realize it is oil. She stood on the porch in a soft green coat. The years had put silver in her hair earlier than I had expected. She was tired in the way mothers are tired, love pulling iron from bone. Caleb and Audrey barreled past her into the entryway in a wash of noise and warmth that made me swallow against a very old ache. Pancakes? I asked them, as if nothing in the world could have changed since last weekend. Yes, Audrey announced. With the chocolate chips you hide in the left pantry behind the oats. Caleb smirked. She knows all your hideouts, Grandpa. I have no hideouts, I said. Only shelves. While I mixed batter, Elise stood at the kitchen island and watched me the way one studies something that might vanish if you look away. Finally she said, why did you do it that way? In public. Because he does his theater in public, I said. Because you needed to see a man be told no by another man who loves your children. Because I do not have another decade for slow lessons. She flinched. "You are not dying," she said too quickly. "Everyone is," I said, and then to soften it, "because I am not only a judge in my own home, I am not leaving. Not while there is work to do." "Dad," she said, and then again, quieter, "Dad." Her hand found the hem of the dish towel. She used to twist her hair like that as a girl when she was thinking too much. She smoothed the towel out on the counter. "He is not all bad." "I know," I said. "I have never met an all-bad man. I have met men who are afraid. I have met men who mistake velocity for purpose. I have met a lot of men who cannot tell the difference between deserving and getting." "I married him," she said, as if she were confessing to a crime. "You did," I said. "You did not marry him to punish me." She shook her head. "It does not feel like that." "Shame," I said, "is difficult to pin down. It leaks into things. Let us not invite it. Let us be clear. I am not angry because you want to protect your husband. I am firm because I want to protect your children from the consequences of another man's ego. He says you are manipulating everything. I am stewarding the things your mother and I built with calluses and small joys. There is a difference that matters to me. We ate pancakes with maple syrup that has the consistency of memory, thick and honest. The children told me about a class lizard that escaped and hid for an entire day behind the radiator. Miss Carrington cried, Audrey said, "Odd. Teachers do not cry." I told her that everyone does, and that the world would be kinder if we did it more where others could see. After the plates were washed and the table was wiped, Elise and I sat and went through paper. I showed her the trust amendments in plain language. I pulled out the original note for the house. I slid across the table a copy of the cuisine-scented thing I had stapled to a steakhouse bill. "The house," she whispered, tracing her finger along the typed name of the trust, "you could. I could insist on the terms. I could foreclose. I could make a point. I will not do that to you or the children. Here is my offer." I breathed. I had been holding it so tightly inside me it had become part of the scaffolding for my ribs. "You will bring the payments current, at a level we will agree is reasonable and possible. They will come from an account you control alone. I will sign an addendum carving out an explicit protection. In the event of dissolution of your marriage, the house remains in the trust for the sole benefit of you and the children. If you remain married, that clause still applies. I will pay the property tax this year and next as my contribution to the stability of my grandchildren's lives. If he wants to call that control, let him. I will call it love with guardrails." She put her face in her hands. "He will never agree," she said into her palms. "He does not have to," I said. "This is your life." "That is not how marriage works," she said softly. "I know," I said, and June was suddenly in the room, smiling at me for saying the true thing. But sometimes marriage needs a wedge of honesty split into it to keep rot from deepening. Think of it as a postnuptial plank. A repair. She lifted her head. "You always did think in wood." "I always did," I said. We had 3 quiet hours before the next storm. When the doorbell rang just after noon, it startled all of us. Elise stiffened. The kids glanced at the television they were not watching. It was not Gavin on the porch. It was a courier, neat in a navy jacket, holding a padded envelope and a tablet that asked for a signature. "For Mr. Mark Halper," he said, using my full name the way men do when they are delivering duty. I signed, thanked him, and took the envelope to the kitchen. Inside was a letter on glossy letterhead from the manufacturer that supplied the devices Gavin's company distributed. It began with polite weather, then moved to the point. Due to the immediate suspension of the line of credit backing your inventory purchases, we must place a temporary hold on all shipments pending confirmation of adequate funding. We value our relationship, regret any inconvenience. I felt it not as triumph, but as a shift in tectonics. Fault lines are invisible until the ground reminds you where they are. The next envelope arrived an hour later via email and then in print, as if the sender hoped words would land harder if they hit twice. It was from his company's vice president of finance, a woman with sharp sentences and a spine made of math. We have been alerted to the acceleration of your primary credit facility. Please come by before close of business to review immediate options. We will need to notify the board. I did not send it to Elise. She does not need every tremor. I forwarded it to my lawyer with a question that started with the word ethics, because there is a line past which I will not step even for a satisfying story. She replied within minutes, "You are the lender. You have acted properly. No more. No more. There is a holiness in limits." At 4:30 my door rattled not with a bell, but with the impatient fists of a man who has learned that banging harder sometimes produces what he wants. I met him on the porch before the fists could turn into a scene the neighborhood would remember. "Open the door," he said, already inside the threshold with his voice. "It is open," I said, "to my daughter and my grandchildren." "You are going to ruin us," he said, and there was a little boy in it now, the whine of a child who cannot believe the cookie jar has a lid. "No," I said, and then more gently, because I had once held this man's hand at a hospital when his mother's pacemaker surgery had run long, because we are never only one thing to each other, you are going to learn something, and learning sometimes feels like ruin when the lesson is pride. "You went to my company," he said. "I went to my banker," I said, "who happens to own your paper." "You could have pulled me aside," he said, even though every pulled-aside conversation we had ever had ended with him putting his hands on his hips and saying the phrase, "I have got this." "I did not want to be alone when you decided to make me the villain," I said. "Candles and witnesses are useful." He stood on the porch and breathed much too fast. It was a January afternoon that had given us the gift of light, and he was wasting it in a storm of his own making. I should have shut the door. Instead I said the sentence that changed the shape of everything that came next. "If you want to be a father tonight," I said, "you will sit on my couch and help your daughter with her spelling, and you will ask your son about his model airplane glue, and you will talk to your wife in a tone that does not confuse fear for authority. If you want to be a boy tonight, you will go downtown and argue with a woman who balances numbers for a living. I cannot make that decision for you." He stared at me as if he could not decide if I had insulted him or handed him a map. Then he laughed, one small bark with nothing in it, and walked toward his car, head twitching the way a bird's does when it is looking for a window that will open because the one it crashes into will not. He chose the boardroom. Of course he did. Men like him believe a door with a brushed metal handle is always the right door. When you build a life out of wood and schedules and taking calls inside your truck because your daughter is inside the house sobbing in the aftermath of her first heartbreak, you do not rejoice when a man you wanted to be better fails in a room made of glass. You just keep making dinner. We ate lentil soup that night. Audrey soaked her bread so thoroughly that she had to scoop it up with a spoon, and she laughed at the mess she had made. Caleb told me he might want to try violin again. Elise sat at the table after the kids went upstairs and said, "He does not understand what you did. He only understands what he feels you did to him." "Most of us start there," I said. "The trick is not to end there too." For so long, she said, I could not separate what was mine from what he needed walled off for himself. I was scared. He is good at making fear sound like logic. You are good at making love sound like apology, I said. Let us both get better. She smiled, small and real. I can try. Good, I said. I am very good at watching people try. That was the week of papers. There were freezes and holds and the rusted noises men make when they are told no by a system that cannot be charmed. There was also a new rhythm. Caleb came to my shop each afternoon and sanded the long edge of a pine board for a bookshelf he had decided to make. He is a careful boy. He held the paper at 45 degrees the way I showed him, then adjusted without defensiveness when I suggested a different grip. You do not have to be perfect, I told him. You have to be present. Audrey found the old jar of buttons June had kept, poured them onto a cookie sheet, and arranged them by color until a storm outside moved through. On Friday my phone chimed with a message from a number I did not recognize. It was a photograph of Gavin in an elevator, his face half shadowed in the reflective metal beside the buttons, a cardboard box in his arms. The caption from the sender, a woman in finance whose sentences had edges, read, "He will land where he lands." We do not make policy exceptions for hubris. I thanked her, then deleted the image. Even now, there are humiliations I will not keep. On Sunday I sat with my grandchildren in the church pew where I used to sit with June. A graduate of the youth orchestra played Bach on a cello in the corner, and the sound traveled across the sanctuary like a truth you suddenly recognize as familiar. Elise did not come. She texted that she needed the morning to think. Later that afternoon she arrived with a folder and eyes that had chosen a new kind of tired. I opened a new account in my name, she said at the door. I went to the bank with our marriage certificate and came home with a quiet in my head I did not realize I had missed. Sit, I said. I will make tea. We said nothing while the kettle warmed. Steam means silence, if you let it. When she finally spoke, the words were simple. I told him I would not co-sign suicide, she said. I told him we would take your offer for the house. I told him to talk to me like I was his wife and not a publicist. I told him if he tried to use the children as leverage again, he would find the door of our trust locked. How did he take it? I asked. He threw a glass, she said, and the old fear rose in me like a cold spring. She saw it. Not at me. He did not touch me. He just wanted something to break that was not him. Men like him often try to break a thing in the room so they can pretend they have not already cracked something in themselves, I said. I am sorry. I am proud of you. She exhaled. It sounded like the end of a held breath that had lasted years. You can be both, she said. We lived in a new way after that. Not fairy tale. Not simple. But direct. The 30-day clock on the house forced routines back onto rails. Elise set up automatic payments from the account in her name. My lawyer filed the addendum to the trust. The children did not suddenly become perfect. Audrey lay on the floor of the kitchen one morning and announced she had lost all bones, which made Caleb laugh hard enough that he spilled his milk. The dog we had inherited from a neighbor decided that my slippers held secrets worth solving with his teeth. The sink clogged, I unclogged it. Life is mostly that, small services rendered with hands that do not resent the work. As for Gavin, he did what men do when they discover they cannot force consequence to heal. He sulked. Then he shopped for a version of me who would say yes. He visited his father, who owns a boat he cannot afford and a heart condition he insists is the fault of the cardiologists. He visited a friend from business school who offered him a couch and an impressive collection of whiskey bottles that had more dust than liquid in them. He went to his sister's house and was sent back to the car by a niece who had learned quickly how to say, "No thank you," to an uncle who made messes sound like adventures. He came home. He held the children, the way men hold when they remember their arms are not just for pointing at the world. He stood in the kitchen and admitted he was wrong the way a man says the words for the first time, haltingly, like a new language. Wrong about what? Elise asked, even though she knew. About your father, he said. Which part? She asked, even though she also knew. The part where I imagined my reflection on him, he said. The part where I needed to make him small so I could stay big in my own head. There are apologies that perform, and there are apologies that lay down arms. This was something else, not quite either, but closer to the kind that makes room for repair. I do not work in absolutes anymore. If I did, I would have broken everything I touched after June left. I did not rush to meet him in that moment. I let them have their kitchen. Later, I met him on my porch like a man meets another man when there is a bridge he is willing to test with his weight but not yet willing to dance across. I have a job, he said without an opening. It is lower. Different. It is not a title I will brag about. But it is work. Good, I said. There is nothing wrong with that sentence. And the house, he said, eyes not quite holding mine, I will not fight her. Good, I said again. There was more to say. There always is. But sometimes you leave a moment in its clothes. You did not have to do it that way, he said, not as a reproach now, but as a small wonder. In front of everyone. I did, I said. I needed witnesses for both of us. He nodded. It worked, he said. He tried a smile. It was not the old one. It did not have that moonlight film he wore when he believed he could bend the night. I had dessert later anyway, he said, and it was such a simple human line that I found myself almost laughing. We are not a Hallmark card now. If you want that story, you can find it on a rack near a pharmacy counter. We are a family that learned a corner of truth in a room that smelled of butter and beef, and then learned the rest of it in a kitchen that smelled of pancakes and dish soap. I do not know what he will be in 10 years. I do not know if Elise will wake one morning and decide the repair holds, or if she will come to me and say, I tried long enough. I have, however, placed my hand on the wheel, and I do not intend to let go while breath is in me. Last week, I stood at the back of the school auditorium while Audrey sang with the first graders. She found my eyes in the crowd and lifted her chin the way June used to when we were walking into a room we could not control. After the applause, she rushed out to the lobby and tugged my sleeve. Did you hear me, Grandpa? I heard you, I said. Daddy said he heard me too, she whispered. I am glad, I said. We went home by way of the bakery that still makes glazed donuts like they are a benediction. At the kitchen table, Caleb told me about Bernoulli's principle as if he had discovered air pressure himself, and Elise looked at me like a woman who had remembered the shape of her own name. When I did the dishes that night, I thought about the steakhouse and the smirk that vanished and the first edition silence that followed it. I thought about June. About my father's pocketknife, which now sits open on the mantel as a reminder that a good blade is not made to threaten, but to cut clean where rot would travel. I thought about words that do not exist, one for the feeling you get when you realize that love that has backbone is not tenderness's enemy, but its ally. The phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Gavin. Thank you for the note to the school, it said. I will pick up Caleb on Thursdays. Good, I texted back. See you at the game. He sent a small thumbs up. I put the phone down. The sink water ran warm. The house sounded like it used to, footsteps upstairs, a soft argument over whose turn it was to feed the dog, the thrum of a dishwasher that has done more work than most of the machines in our lives. I dried my hands. I stood in the doorway of my own kitchen and let the sight hold me, my daughter at the table, shoulders no longer curved, my grandson with glue on his fingers, already thinking about balance and lift, my granddaughter blackening the corner of a word search with a determination that will either serve her or need to be shaped by someone who loves her enough to say no. I am not a loser. I am old enough to know that the world will use every word it can to name you, and that the best thing you can do is to be the sort of man whose actions pick the definition you will accept. And if you want to know whether the moment at the steakhouse was worth it, the public, steady, surgical thing that cut a smirk in half, here is what I will tell you: sometimes dessert is not sweet until you have learned how to eat it. Sometimes you pay the bill with a note that reads like a verdict and turns out to be a beginning. Sometimes a grandfather has to be the weather that changes the season. When I told him he would never see another dime from me, he believed the night would end with a scene and a salvage. It ended with a family choosing a different map. That was the last time he called me a loser. He uses my name now. He has learned the value of true things. He has learned, the slow way most of us do, that a man is worth what he protects, not what he can purchase. And every time I drive past their street in the early evening, and the lights come on in the windows of the house that is legally mine but belongs to the people I love, I say a small prayer of gratitude for a wooden table, a folded note, a boy who read my face, a girl who wanted ice cream, and the moment before dessert when a smirk finally learned where it ends.
Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed listening to this story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel to help support the creation of more stories like this. Have a great day or evening.